Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Frank Olsen Twins YouTube channel. I am back with another ribbon mic build, which might be my most ambitious, challenging build to date. Can I take two of RCA's most revered mics and try to design a custom mic with features from each one? Stick around to find out. One quick note, if you are trypophobic, this video is probably not for you. I'll see you in the next one. Okay, let's get right to it. First, I'm going to make the body for the mic, which also happens to be an acoustical labyrinth. I've done this before with epoxy and vellum board, but I had the idea to fill an acrylic tube with epoxy. The acrylic tube is incredibly strong, and unlike the old 77 bodies, the lip at the top of this mic will never break off. Okay, my first confession in this video, I actually had to pour this epoxy twice, since the first round bled right through that thin copy paper on the bottom. These little paper tubes will just give a proper guide for drilling the final shape. Now all the paper gets drilled out, and obviously if you have a drill press, this job will be much easier. The lower half of this body is hollow to fit the transformer and wiring. I omitted most of the sanding steps for this video except where really necessary, but we all know drilling is half the fun. I think it's worth mentioning that I use a modest collection of tools for my projects. Almost all the work you see was done at my desk inside my apartment. I'll touch more on this a little later. Obviously, if you have bigger, better tools, such as a mill, lathe, or drill press, you can start with a solid rod like LABYRINTH to make the body. This is the final sanding before paint using 400 grit sandpaper. I thought the lower cup was a little too shiny, so I'm knocking it down with some fine sandpaper. Now that the body is coming together, I get to do what I think is the most interesting part of the process, solving the maze of the labyrinth. You can do this in a computer, or as I did here, with a long piece of string. When finished, the labyrinth will become one long tube for sound to travel through. The length of the tube gives the sound waves that pass the ribbon a time offset while dampening their energy. As you'll see, the labyrinth is approximately 4 feet long, which is an impressive feat of engineering for such a small body. Once you solve the maze, you get to bore out the airways on each side of the chamber. Here I'm designing and gluing up the sound wave guides for the ribbon motor. They started off looking like those on the KU3, but ended up a little closer to the 77. They are finished in superglue. Okay, since I don't have a machine shop, I decided to design some parts and have them cut online. There are many places that offer this service now. As you can see, I went with a fiberglass ribbon mounting chassis and a steel magnet yoke. This is how they fit together. The fit was okay, not perfect, and there was still a bit of machining required for all the parts. Considering the competitive prices, it was still a better deal than trying to cut my own parts. Alright, confession time. That first stainless steel yoke I was using did not work, because it's mostly non-magnetic. I had to order a new part with a high iron content to complete the magnetic flux return circuit, and also give the magnets something to stick to. I suspect this part was cut with a CNC plasma cutter, since the cuts required a lot of corrective filing. The cutting was not as clean as on that stainless steel yoke. To glue in the magnets, I'm first cleaning with alcohol, then using super glue. You get about 1 second to make any corrections, so make it count. The extra magnet on the outside is the only way I could get the second magnet to snap into its proper place. I did several unsuccessful dry runs before coming up with that workaround. This is the finished yoke. I designed and ordered 2 armatures to be cut from aluminum. I drilled and bent them into their appropriate shapes. These brass mounts will hold the completed motor inside the top armature. And now the parts are ready for paint. I found a color that I think really suits the mic. It's called chocolate brown. If anyone has a very good replacement for RCA Umber Gray, please let me know in the comments. This is the final product. Each part got 2 coats. This will be the strain relief for the mic cable. It was originally designed for brass lamps. Okay, now let's finish up this ribbon mount. This is some pure silver stock. You can get it from any jewelry making vendor. It's not very expensive. I think this piece was about $20 shipped. These parts will be the actual contacts for the ribbon and hookup wires. I tried to keep them all very flat while also rounding any sharp edges which might tear a delicate ribbon. For future builds, I might consider a thicker stock, but this one does work very well. The contacts get drilled, and I made some clamps from brass flat stock. Alright, it's time to make the windscreens. This is the first set I made out of about 3 total pairs. I pounded the aluminum over molds, which left a big wrinkle at the top of each grill. So I made some epoxy and acrylic molds and pressed them in with clamps. At first I thought it might not work, but after a trial run, the result was exactly what I was hoping for. Usually these molds are made of heavy steel, but since this was a very sparse mesh, this mold worked pretty well. This will be the steel band to cover the seams, and it needed a little coercion with some rounded plastic tools to take shape. After being set in place, I can glue in the grill cloth. Here I'm using a thinned out acrylic medium to glue in the cloth. This is the mounting yoke I designed and bent over several molds to make a rounded U-shape. It attaches to a DIY shock absorber that I made with some silicone washers and a long screw. This is cashmere yarn to fill the labyrinth in the acoustic chamber. The original RCA designs used specific cow hair to dampen each little tube. It's a common sentiment that packing was inconsistent from mic to mic or even between tubes. I thought it might be more uniform to use one long braid of yarn to achieve a more consistent result. I used heavy mat board to make the top and bottom chamber plates. And now I can thread the yarn into the labyrinth to dampen the entire length of the chamber. My goal is to dampen the sound waves as much as possible, while still allowing them to travel the entire length of the tube. If the tube gets completely blocked, phase issues can occur and the pickup pattern will suffer. Top and bottom plates get glued on. And the armatures get bolted on as well. The back of the ribbon motor connects to the labyrinth with a tube. It's made from brass tubing, steel reinforced epoxy, and clear acrylic. I made 4 different tubes before making the best one, which will be installed later in the video. The holes in the back of the tube are necessary to give the mic a unidirectional response. Now the transformer can be mounted in its case, inside the bottom armature. The wires will go through the chamber to attach to the motor. Alright, it's time to finish the motor assembly. I used very small brass screws and nuts, which were original equipment on old RCA mics. However, stainless steel would work well here too. I'm adding a ribbon for some initial tests, just to be sure that everything works before moving on. Looks good, so I'll finish wiring it up. The final ribbon will be installed when the mic is completely assembled. The motor gets a humbucking loop made from solid copper wire. The steel yoke could also be used for this purpose, but I'm sticking a little closer to the vintage RCA designs for this. The mounting plates get installed and the copper loop gets soldered to the dog ears of my connector. The other contact gets a wire too. The motor gets installed into the body as well as the mounting studs. The wiring gets tinned. After straightening up the armature one last time, I'll add some small silicone washers as I remount the motor. My ribbon element was out of phase with my other microphones. After the initial test, I'll be back to swap these wires. The output wire can be installed, but it first needs to pass through both bottom sections of the body. Once the cable is soldered and cleaned, the body can be assembled and screwed together with a single screw. Alright folks, we're in the home stretch here. Everything is installed and wired up, we just need a fresh ribbon. While we watch the ribbon install, I'll tell you a bit more about the final design choices I made and the overall process of building such an ambitious mic project. Though most of the body mimics the RCA 77DX, including the chamber dimensions and windscreens, the ribbon itself is taken from the KU3A specification. It's almost twice the width of the 77DX ribbon, making it more robust while having a greater output and a better signal-to-noise ratio. I also prefer the fixed unidirectional pattern of the KU3 instead of the optional patterns found on the 77DX. The waveguides I made are an approximation between the 77 and the KU3, but they're basically my best guess for a supercardioid pickup pattern. In the old user manual for the KU3A, RCA recommends that qualitative tests be done at a distance of approximately 4 feet to get the flattest response from the mic. Anything closer than that will have more proximity effect, and the pickup pattern changes for the low end. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I try to fabricate most of my projects right on my desktop. Since I find metalwork to be a bit out of that scope, I had many of the parts cut by a US online vendor. You can see that the parts were cut pretty well, but they did all require cleanup, some more than others. Each part also required some pretty lengthy CAD sessions to make a suitable drawing for cutting. I don't really want to guess how many hours of research I invested, but I'll tell you that I did record about 20 hours of assembly footage alone to make this video. I made this mic about as inexpensive as possible, and the parts probably came in around $300 total. My total time invested is probably around 60 to 80 hours, perhaps 200 hours if I add the CAD work. Now this video is not sponsored, but I would like to take a moment to thank the modern ribbon mic gurus, David Royer and Wes Dooley, without whom Homage designs like mine would not exist. Having used microphones from both their companies in various recording studios has definitely been an inspiration for my projects, and I think it's fair to credit them both for the current popularity in ribbon microphones the world over. I'm inclined to say that given the amount of effort and expertise that goes into making such sensitive yet robust microphones, makes the current offerings from these American ribbon mic companies an excellent value. Once the ribbon is fully set, the tube can be installed. Since it needs to be sealed to the back of the motor, I'll use a sticky foam tape to attach it. The mesh surrounding these waveguides will keep tramp iron at bay. printed out a couple of logos in lieu of a sticker, but the first one was a little too big. I ended up cutting a smaller one for a better fit. Eventually I may have a sticker printed for it. Once the windscreens are installed, the mic can be mounted into the yoke. It works pretty well, so I think I'm ready to test the mic. Before I forget, this is the final and current version of the extension tube. Okay, now I can take it to a local studio and hear how it sounds on guitar. Alright, there we have it. A custom design of two famous RCA mics made at my desktop. If you hadn't guessed, I narrated the entire video with this mic, and I think it works pretty well for that application too. Have you made a ribbon mic? Or do you use them often? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. As always, if you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.